introduce JCI. Your chamber and for young to positively impact our local communities. We focus on 4 development areas: individual development, community development, business development, and international affairs. Before we begin, I would like to welcome Mr. Olajide Adeyemi, JCI advisor from Nigeria, Ms. Daniela Fool, 2020 member of the Advocacy Committee for Africa and the Middle East, Ms. Franchette Emilien, 2020 JCI Mauritius President, Ms. Aline Sherimian, 2020 JCI Lebanon President, Ms. Ala Al-Azim, 2020 JCI Damascus Local President, Mr. Sunil Verma, 2020 JCI Kolkata President, Mr. Hassan Abu Khudr, 2020 JCI Zahle President, and Mr. Giorgio Tev, 2020 JCI Zahle VP of Business Development. We also have the pleasure to welcome international guests from KSA, North Macedonia, Syria, and UAE. Ladies and gentlemen, JCI Beirut is delighted to host Ms. Rania Haddad, 2013 Executive Vice President for Africa and the Middle East and JCI Senator, to discuss social responsibility. Ms. Haddad has a bachelor's degree in Computer and Communications Engineering and a master's degree in Business Administration and works in project coordination. Since 2005, she has volunteered as an active member of JCI. We are honored to have you with us. For any questions you have, please type in the chat box. JCI Beirut Vice Presidents Marie-Josée Rafoul and Marie Khalife will help you out. Our session will begin now. Enjoy.
Thank you, President Jessica, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity of addressing the JCI Beirut members and their guests. It has always been a pleasure to support JCI Lebanon and its local chapters. And thank you for all the guests who joined us today, whether from Lebanon or outside Lebanon, and whether they are JCI or non-JCI members. I will be speaking for about 45 minutes or so, and then we will leave a few minutes towards the end, maybe 15 minutes, for questions. Whatever questions you may have, please feel free to write them in the chat box or send them to JCI Beirut Vice President Marie-Josée, and she will be compiling them so that we can tackle them towards the end. Usually I prefer using this method instead of tending to the questions during the session, because sometimes some people might ask about something that we are already going to tackle during the session. Okay, so in the past 2 or 3 months since the lockdown started around the world, many, if not all of you, might have been thinking, is what we are passing through a reality? Or might it be a dream or a nightmare that we're going through and that we're just not waking up from anytime soon for it to be going on and on and on? What would it take to disrupt our lives in such a way and pause major economies around the world for such a long time? In recent history, there are many incidents, major incidents that really shook the world that we might have witnessed during our lifetime. But then a few days or a few weeks would pass, and then life would go back to normal to a certain extent. If I want to count just a few only, I would go back to the mega earthquake that happened in East Asia in 2005 that resulted in major tsunamis that took the lives of many people and disrupted several countries in Eastern Asia. Back in 2001, the 9/11 attacks, and there are many examples that were really historical points, or they really shook the world when they happened. And we might have witnessed other milder pandemics during our lifetime, but definitely nothing of this magnitude. I'd like also, as much as possible and within whatever time we have, to try to engage you as much as possible. Like, can any of you share with us in the chat box any pandemics that you might have heard historically that might have impacted mankind? Any volunteers who would like to share with us? SARS, okay, recently. Plague, the Black Death in the 14th century, that's true. And plague in general has been accompanying mankind ever since the year 165 after Christ. Spanish flu, 1918, that's true. H1N1. Malaria, technically, of course, and malaria still exists. It hasn't been eradicated. Ebola, definitely. Luckily, Ebola was centered in like 3 main countries in Africa: Liberia, if I remember correctly, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. And I think that recently there is a new outbreak of Ebola. Okay, Spanish flu, we mentioned it. That's true. Okay, many of you mentioned several. Some of them didn't have very high death tolls, and some did, especially the Black Death. Now we will see in a slide later on that it took the lives of 200 million people on planet Earth when it happened. And the Spanish flu claimed more than 50 million lives when it happened right after the First World War. So let me share with you a couple of minutes of a video that tells you a bit about the history of pandemics as they accompanied mankind. Okay. Can anyone just say if they can see and they can hear?
Yes, everything is clear.
Okay.
As humans organize themselves into larger, more densely populated cities, the potential.
Can you still hear?
For me personally, it cut off.
Marie, can we switch to your computer?
Yes. Okay.
And Marie, let's just show the first 1 minute 50 seconds of it, please.
As humans organize themselves into larger, more densely populated cities, the potential for infectious disease becomes ever more present. Massive urban areas are like a ticking time bomb for infection, with humans, animals, food, garbage, and sewage stacked tightly on top of each other. It sets the stage for the perfect breeding ground for disease. Our ancient ancestors lived in small, isolated tribes that had very little opportunity to spread germs beyond their community. But after the advent of agriculture, tribes abandoned their nomadic lifestyles and organized into stationary civilizations. Since the dawn of civilization, mankind has dealt with epidemics, plagues, and pandemics. For most of history, city life consisted of overcrowded, unsanitary conditions. Food would often be prepared next to open sewers, while rats, cockroaches, and rotting corpses polluted the drinking water. These early cities also featured humans and animals living in close proximity to one another, conditions that are strikingly similar to those in Wuhan, China, the source of the coronavirus outbreak. These tight living quarters gave rise to the spread of zoonotic diseases, which are contagions transferred from animals to humans, such as COVID-19. Zoonotic diseases have been around since the earliest cities, but they would not become pandemics because these cities were isolated from one another. Once civilizations expanded into vast trading empires, the possibility for widespread disease was unleashed. The first
I think it stopped, Maria.
Yeah, the first
Maria?
minute and 50 seconds.
Okay, that's fine. Can we switch, please, back to my screen?
It's for you to just do the screen share on your PowerPoint.
Yeah. Okay. As you heard, sorry if there was a delay between the voice and the screen, but hearing what was being said is more important than the sketches that were being done. So the purpose of this video was to show you that as humanity developed, historically increased, and ultimately globalization increased, and of course the more there was trade, the more infectious diseases spread with people. And historically we have been impacted with many different pandemics, but it happens that during our lifetime right now, this is a really major, a pandemic of a major magnitude, a major impact on the whole world. And of course, it is going to lead to, it has already started leading to a shift in the paradigm and definitely a new normal. Let me share with you an interesting slide about the death tolls of the major pandemics in history. Okay. Okay. If we take a quick look at them, I will not go through all of them, but I'll just highlight the major ones. As I had mentioned earlier in the session, we have been accompanied by the plague since the year 165 AD. And it kept on coming back every few hundred years with different magnitudes. So it came back in the year 541. It came back as the Black Death or the bubonic plague in the 14th century, in the year 1347. And it is known to be the pandemic with the highest rate of mortalities in all history, as it claimed 200 million lives. It came back even in the 17th century as the Great Plague, and again in the 18th century, and then as the third plague in the year 1855. And we have a variety of other pandemics that have been accompanying us, like malaria, like smallpox, like cholera. Cholera, for instance, has been eradicated in the developed countries. It no longer exists. However, it still exists in underdeveloped or developing countries that have poor sewage systems in them, and they contaminate the drinking water of the people. We have malaria. We have had several other pandemics like recently, like SARS, swine flu, and so on. But nothing compared to the COVID-19. And if we go back just to the last century, in the 20th century, we had four major pandemics, which started with the Spanish flu, that started and lasted for 1 year right after the end of the First World War. And it started spreading as the troops were going back home. And then we have the Asian flu that hit in the year 1957, also lasted for 1 year and claimed 1.1 million lives. And then the Hong Kong flu in 1968, and it claimed 1 million lives. And you can see that these are three different types of flu. So flu historically has always many times developed into like major pandemics. And then last but not least, we have the HIV or AIDS, claimed between 25 and 35 million lives. Of course, it exists until nowadays, it still is a fatal disease. Maybe because of the development of different medications that were being prescribed to the patients, maybe their lifespan is now longer. However, it still is, unfortunately, a fatal disease. So all this intro is just to show you that maybe in our lifetime, it is the first time that we are experiencing a pandemic of such magnitude. However, mankind has experienced such pandemics previously, and most of the time they would resort to the same measures in going to lockdowns, in using social distancing, and staying at home. But definitely nowadays it is a little bit more easier with all the different modes of communication and all the technology that we have, which makes remote working easier, mixed learning, and so on. And these are trends that we're going to be talking about towards the end of the session, about some of the things that are going to become part of the new normal, and we as active citizens can try working on and preparing for. As of this morning, the total number of cases of COVID-19 were around 7,500,000 cases. Around half of them are people who had recovered, maybe around 419,000 are cases that unfortunately passed away, and we currently still have more than 3 million cases, which is a big number. And unfortunately, in most parts of the world, the curve is still on the rise. However, in order to salvage the economies, most governments resorted to easing the lockdown in different phases. Some of them are taking major risks, and many scientists, many doctors say that we will most probably have round 2 of COVID-19. And historically, many times wave 2 and wave 3 were even more deadly than wave 1. I'm not saying that to be negative. This is a reality that we are facing. I'm just trying to relay the message that with all the efforts that most of the governments around the world have put, even with the lockdowns, even with everything that we had to go through, some of them maybe took quick action appropriately. Some of them were less quick, and that's why they lost control over the cases in their countries. However, everything that was done by the governments is not sufficient in itself, and there is a major role for social responsibility to complement whatever efforts the governments around the world have put into mitigating the effect of this virus. Those of you who are JCI members know that we say that there are 3 main pillars of society: the government, the corporate world, and civil society. Even outside JCI, the individual herself or himself is also considered as a pillar on their own. So we really need to be socially responsible because we are all in this together, and if we do not work together in order to minimize the impact, then it will take much longer and the aftermath will be more and more and more. So I would like to encourage all of you to take part, and we will be discussing now the different ways that you can do that, whether on the personal level as an individual, whether if you are a member of JCI or a member of any other NGO, or if you are an owner of a company, or if you work in a company that is a big one that has a CSR department, or even a multinational company, because most multinational companies have corporate social responsibility departments. So if we start with the individual, there are several things that we on a personal level can do now that lockdown is easing and life is starting to catch up. However, because as we saw, the number of cases is still on the rise, this can really be critical, and it can result in a second wave of this virus. So as an individual, there are a multitude of things that we can do in order to protect ourselves and protect the people that we live with. So first, it is very important to abide by all the prevention and the measures that are being implemented by your government, by your municipality, wherever you live. Whenever you are outside in public, never go out without a mask. In some places, for instance, in Lebanon, they have enforced a certain fine if they see you on the streets without a mask. In other places, maybe not. But it is really critical for you to protect yourself using a mask, especially if you are a holder of the virus, because chances are much less if you have the virus and you have the mask that you will be spreading it to others who are near you. Always keep your hands clean and away from your face. It is very important that you do not touch your face with contaminated hands. When necessary, for instance, there are many supermarkets that are distributing gloves when you go to them at the entrance. Sometimes gloves might give you a false sense of security. So also, if needed, of course, put on the gloves, but don't put your hands on contaminated surfaces or objects and then forget and put them on your face, for instance. This is very important. Whenever you are among people, in a supermarket or at work or wherever, always keep a social distance of at least 2 meters or 1.5 meters to protect yourself and to protect them, just in case you have the virus and you're not showing symptoms as well. And it is very important that if you feel the symptoms of COVID-19, that you directly get in touch with a doctor and you get the appropriate PCR test. Always fact check before spreading any news. With all the social media hype, there is a tendency for people to spread news. Let it be an avenue for spreading positivity and not negativity. And it's very important that you fact check before, because in many cases we receive pieces of news or even articles that are fake, or voice messages that are just rumors, and people are already stressed out. So let's try to alleviate their stress instead of increasing it further. And please avoid going to social gatherings or doing physical meetings. It is true that life to a certain extent is going back to normal, but this does not mean that you should start going out with friends or going to see family members, especially those who are more vulnerable than others, like elderly people or people who have specific medical conditions that they already have. So these are some of the things that you, as a socially responsible citizen, can do between you and your own self. Now, in the civil society, if we want to talk about NGOs have always played a pivotal role when there are crises, not only pandemics, because they complement what governments do. I would like also to ask you, like many of you are already members of an NGO. What are the benefits of being a volunteer? Like, what is the added value? You usually pay money from your pocket, you put time, you put effort. I'd like to see from your point of view, why are you volunteers? Who would like to share with us in the chat box?
I'll be reading the comments as they go. But as we're waiting, on a personal level, there's a lot of community and personal development, a lot of new skills that are learned in moments of like where we really need to be resilient that I would not have learned in other situations. It teaches you a lot of stuff.
Okay, that's true.
Franchette is saying personal development and the satisfaction on the face of the beneficiaries is just wow. A message from Hassan, being volunteers will help us to develop our skills. We have, you develop the mindset of perceiving challenges as opportunities. A message from our VP Giorgio. We like to have the opportunity to help our communities where we find vulnerabilities. Another message from our VP Muhammad, helping people makes me feel happy. A message from our past president Danielle, personal development as well as giving back to others, helping the society. Personally, I'm not a volunteer yet, but I would like to volunteer because in my opinion, that teaches us to be more responsible towards other and our society to give more.
Maybe Marie, you can brief Donna about JCI on the side. Maybe she would like to
Absolutely.
join us.
And a message from Jad.
Yeah.
Sorry, to make a small positive impact when things seem too negative.
Yes, everything that was said is correct. In a nutshell, there are a multitude of benefits that individuals can get when they are volunteers. Some people use it to widen their network, like if they have a business and they are interested in expanding their business, then being members of NGOs gives you the opportunity to get to learn, to get to know other people. Some are not just after having additional contacts, but like making actual friends. So this is also an opportunity because chances are high that you would meet like-minded individuals in NGOs that you are a member of, which means you would get along well with them, and this would lead to friendships. It is also recommended that when you move to a new city, a new country, that you enroll in the NGOs, in the community that you are in, or whatever group under a church, a mosque, a temple, or whatever group there is, because you would get to know more about the people who live in that place and how they think, and it is easier for you to blend into that place. It is very fulfilling when you do, like NP Franchette said, when you reap the result of the good that you do to others, it gives you a sense of self-satisfaction and fulfillment a lot, and it elevates your self-esteem in your eyes. If you are happy in your job, that is good for you, and you might be learning new skills, just like VP Marie said. There are a multitude of new skills that you can gain when you are a volunteer, from becoming a good time manager, from being a good communicator, learning leadership properly, conducting effective meetings, being result-oriented. And these are usually characteristics that reputable companies look for. More than grades, when they are, for instance, conducting sessions in universities in order to recruit fresh graduates. So, and if you are not happy in your own job, also being a volunteer and gaining these new skills can help you in shifting, discovering another passion that you might have, and maybe shifting to another job, or even becoming an entrepreneur yourself and doing something that you really like, that you don't feel that it is work for you. So there are many other benefits of being a volunteer. I just wanted to highlight a few for you to show you the benefits of being a volunteer and the major role that NGOs can play in such crises. As for the corporate world, doing corporate social responsibility and having such departments in companies is of a lot of added value for these companies, because definitely this is an indirect way of them of marketing their service or marketing the product that they are offering. Some of them might have the community-based mind, where they really are interested in doing good business, in the sense that, of course, their priority is making profits out of the business that they are doing, but they really would like to benefit the community that they are part in, or the country, or even the whole world. If not, that's fine, because the ultimate result is that they would be impacting the community. And especially in hard times like the ones that we are passing through, your clients will remember you when things go back to normal more, when you stand beside them as a company. And in this way, you will be building more loyalty from your clients and your customers. Let me go back to the presentation. Okay. So in summary, there are many ways that you can be socially responsible, whether as an individual, in the ways that we listed, as a member of an NGO, on the variety of projects that you can work on, and of course, based on a needs analysis, like see what need there is for you to create the highest impact. And of course, in the corporate world, like in the current pandemic, for instance, there are many major companies that started doing additional initiatives. For instance, ever since mid-March, Clarins, the French skincare and makeup brand, they shifted into part of their production became doing hand sanitizers, and they distributed them to the authorities in France and in a couple other countries around the world without getting money for them so that they would support the medical frontliners who are working with the people. Same with Louis Vuitton, the French luxury brand. Their perfume production line shifted into creating hand sanitizers earlier in March. The famous retail brand H&M, for instance, they started producing masks and gloves and PPEs, personal protective equipment, and donating them as well to the concerned people. So there are many ways that in companies you can work on a variety of CSR initiatives. Now, like everything in life, even a pandemic, as much as it has negative impact, it can also have positive impact. So I will go with you through some of the negative impact that we can base some initiatives that we can work on or projects that we can come up with in order to alleviate the pain of the people who are suffering from them. And in the final slide, and I'll be giving you some examples from companies around the world and other NGOs and initiatives that are being done in order to tackle these problems. And in the final slide after this one, I will also be tapping on the positive impact, because I personally, as much as I'm a realistic person, I also like to look at the positive side of things. Like, of course, the negative impact of the pandemic is much higher than the positive impact, but there is some positivity to look into, which we will highlight after this slide. So a major point is tolerance and coexistence. There have been many stories from different parts of the world about xenophobia, about racism, about people discriminating, for instance, against Chinese, against Asians. Even many Asians are afraid now to go to Europe because they are under the impression that they would be discriminated against. Now, it's true that if we come to think of it, the virus started in Wuhan in China, but the Chinese people, whatever the reason, like there are many conspiracy theories and there are many different interpretations of how the virus started, but this is not our point of discussion for now. The Chinese people themselves, like, what do they have to do with this? Like, why would they be discriminated against if they are living in a different country? This is just a small example. Other people are discriminating against migrant workers, against domestic workers. Even some of them are discriminating against the frontliners, the medical frontliners. For instance, some of them are even attacking doctors and nurses the order of physicians in Lebanon was asked the doctors around Lebanon yesterday to do like a small strike for them to show that like we are here to assist you. Why are you attacking us? And there are many examples of discrimination that is happening because of this virus. Even the way you treat other people, like your sisters and brothers in humanity. It is true that now we all can be potential carriers of the virus, and we can potentially spread it to others. But there are decent ways of keeping your social distance from them without offending them, and finishing your work with them, or checking on them without really making them feel that you are dirty, don't come near me, because this is not nice at all. So this is something that I wanted to highlight to start with. It might not be as major as the other points, but it is also very important. Now, if we come to think about mental health, mental health has been a taboo, maybe in our part of the world more than others, and it leads unfortunately to many problems and cases of suicide that maybe could have been prevented if the people could have opened up, or they could have talked to someone about them. Now, regardless of the pandemic, there are many people who have mental health issues, be they anxieties or depression. Like no one's life is perfect. So there are ups and there are downs, and there are people who get affected more than others. So regardless of the pandemic, they already have these issues. Now with the lockdown, with the fear of getting the virus, with the fear of having like elderly people or people who have specific medical conditions who might get that virus, the fear of losing their jobs, or even if they already lost their job or they have a salary cut, like it's such a stressful period for everyone all over the world. So it is very important that we work on initiatives that alleviate the mental stress of people and make them feel better. I've seen webinars from different agencies, companies, and being done for free about yoga, about stress relief, about how to fill in your time while you are confined at home. These are very good initiatives. For instance, Starbucks announced on April 6th that they are entitling all their employees who are based in USA to 20 psychiatric sessions for free that they can benefit from, and in addition to their eligible family members, because even before the pandemic, Starbucks was working on a mental health campaign. So this is quite an interesting initiative, and I work in a medical center, and I know that the fees for having a session with a psychiatrist or a psychologist are usually quite high. So to be offered 20 sessions for free is really something good and beneficial. Another major problem that is happening not only in underdeveloped countries but also in the first world countries is domestic violence. You might be surprised that in the first couple of weeks of the lockdown in France, the domestic violence rose by around 30%. And they even came up with codes in the pharmacies. If a married lady is in a specific pharmacy with her husband, and if she says the word mask 19, then the pharmacist should understand that she is undergoing domestic violence, and that she or he should call the authorities in order to assist her. So they started using over there the empty hotels to place these ladies who were really going through a difficult time in their own homes. And there is an NGO that works on gender equality in Lebanon called Abad. They also launched an initiative where they encouraged ladies to put on white sheets on their balconies for the underprivileged ladies who are undergoing domestic violence and cannot speak out, with their number written with their number written on it, so that they can call and inform the authorities that they are undergoing domestic violence at home. And since we talked about all the stress that this pandemic is leading to, of course, like some husbands might go and release the stress by beating their wife, let alone if they might abuse drinking alcohol, or if they already use drugs, then they would be losing their conscience, and beating their wife, they might kill her in the process. I'd like to show you here a quick video by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, in which he talks about the major surge in the domestic violence around the world. Or maybe, Marie, if we can switch back to your screen, it might be better to show them that video.
The COVID-19 pandemic is causing
Was it working for everyone?
untold human suffering and economic devastation around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic is causing untold human suffering and economic devastation around the world. I recently called for an immediate global ceasefire to focus on our shared struggle to overcome the pandemic. I appealed for an end to violence everywhere now. But violence is not confined to the battlefield. For many women and girls, the threat looms largest where they should be safest, in their own homes. And so I make a new appeal today for peace at home and in homes around the world. We know lockdowns and quarantines are essential to suppressing COVID-19, but they can trap women with abusive partners. Over the past weeks, as economic and social pressures and fear have grown, we have seen a horrifying global surge in domestic violence. In some countries, the number of women calling support services has doubled. Meanwhile, healthcare providers and police are overwhelmed and understaffed. Local support groups are paralyzed or short of funds. Some domestic violence shelters are closed, others are full. I urge all governments to make the prevention and redress of violence against women a key part of their national response plans for COVID-19. That means increasing investment in online services and civil society organizations, making sure judicial systems continue to prosecute abusers, setting up emergency warning systems in pharmacies and groceries, declaring shelters as essential services, and creating safe ways for women to seek support without alerting their abusers. Women's rights and freedoms are essential to strong, resilient societies. Together, we can and must prevent violence everywhere, from war zones to people's homes, as we work to beat COVID-19.
Thank you, Marie. This tells a lot. Like, I've been reading about cases of domestic violence, not only in France, in Spain, in the UK, in Italy, in China. So it's not confined only to third world countries or developing countries as well. It is also in the developed countries, and it is really, really important. Especially that kids nowadays are home and they are not going to schools, so they are also witnessing this, and this is not a good way to bring up your kids by beating the wife in front of them. This might cause them trauma. If they are boys, then they might grow up under the impression that this is the way that you should deal with their wife, so you would be implanting it in your own son. When they grow up and they get married, then they would be beating their wife. Or if the wife, unfortunately, is not educated, or she does not reach out, she does not tell about it, the girl might understand that this is how it is, and she should accept. So if she undergoes domestic violence at home, she will also not say anything about it. So it is very, very, this is something that is very, very important. If we go back to the presentation, there is another pillar that I wanted to highlight for you that should be worked on, which is also the physical health like in many places, even with the lockdown easing, maybe the gyms have not opened. Maybe there are people who are used to going to the coast to have a walk or a jog in the morning or in the evening and so on. And they don't have access to that right now. It is very important that we do not emerge from this confinement with like new medical conditions because of the confinement. Let's say we don't get corona, but we get other major diseases because we stayed for so long at home and we did not take good care of our health. So I'd like to encourage you to work on initiatives that promote maybe working out at home or eating healthy, doing exercises, and really paying attention to your physical activity. And especially physical health here is very important because like maybe in the past 2-3 months, some people, if they have some sort of pain in their bodies, they would postpone going to the hospital because they would consider that the hospital is a major source of contamination. They might contract COVID-19, but then other medical conditions might be coming up. So if they have checkups or if they have blood tests or so on to do, please work on such initiatives to encourage the people not to ignore them. And last but not least, a major umbrella that you can work on, of course, is the economy. Millions of jobs have been lost around the world, and this is a major issue. Some people even say that this is we are going to a greater depression than the initial Great Depression that the whole world went into. So you can work on different initiatives. For instance, if you are a company owner and your business, the status of your business allows you, maybe you can, instead of downsizing, maybe you can switch some full-timers into part-timers, so they would still be earning money. Maybe you can, as a company, you would get specific corporate interests in the bank. Some people at such times, because they also need to keep on stocking up at home and have other things to pay for, they might have to take loans from the bank. Maybe if you as a company get a corporate interest, which is lower than the normal one that an individual would get, maybe it would be an opportunity to let your employees benefit from it. If you are a well-connected person and, for instance, you know about investors or different funds, you can encourage people who are coming up with ideas for small to medium enterprises. For instance, Facebook allocated around $100 million to assist small enterprises in more than 30 countries around the world. So there is a lot that can be done. You can encourage people to work on business plans. Maybe it is also a good moment to shift. Maybe there are certain businesses that would always be impacted if we have wave 2 or wave 3 of the pandemic. And with all the globalization we are living in, there is a chance that other pandemics might hit us in the future. So maybe also encouraging entrepreneurs to come up with ideas and keeping this in mind to still remain functional if a pandemic hits. This is something also worth considering. And if we go now to the final slide on areas that you can work under due to the positive impact of COVID-19, there are many companies around the world that maybe they would have the option of working remotely. They would give that option to their employees, but many others wouldn't. And now they were forced to do that. For instance, I work in the administration of a medical center, and I never imagined working from home. So I spent the first 5 consecutive weeks, without an exception, of working purely from home. during the first 1 month and 1 week of the lockdown in Lebanon. So this definitely is going to become more of a trend in the future, and it also reduces the costs for companies, and it has many other benefits as well. So maybe you can work on initiatives that strengthen the internet connections at home, or you teach people on time management, conduct webinars about time management of people who work from home and do not go on specific hours to the office. There are a multitude of initiatives that you can work on to encourage or support working remotely as well. Another trend that we will be witnessing is mixed learning. Schools and universities were forced to conduct the courses online. So in the future, it will most probably become a trend that part of the curriculum will be taught on campus or in school, and part will be done at home. And not all schools have the privilege of having good internet connections. So this is something that you can work on. Or maybe not all the teachers in them would know what tools they can use, and what to do to keep students under control if they are attending a webinar from home. So this is something that you can also work on. For instance, the University of Cambridge, they announced that they're continuing their courses online until the summer of 2021. So this tells you a lot. Regarding the environment, I'm sure many of you have been reading a variety of articles about different animals coming back out and breeding more, from turtles on the shores of India to dolphins, to many other species. This is also an opportunity to think back about how we were conducting our business and how we were conducting our life, and try to preserve our environment and our planet, because not taking good care of our environment would also lead to other types of catastrophes that can also be of the magnitude of a pandemic on us. Family ties, as much as COVID-19 led to a surge in domestic violence, in some cases, it also led to stronger family ties and bonding. There were all sorts of jokes about being introduced to your parents and finding them as like nice people to stay with, or your siblings or cousins, or even like your grandfather, your grandmother. So this truly is an opportunity of going back to the basics. It is important to strengthen family ties, and of course, in addition to that, your social connections. I sometimes, it's true that nothing replaces meeting physically with people, but sometimes I feel with all the webinars and all the meetings that we are conducting online and all the initiatives, I feel that COVID-19 to a certain extent even brought people closer together. So I guess I have reached the end of what I had prepared for you for today. So this is it from my side. If you have any comments, you have any questions that you might like to share with us in the chat box, then Marie or MJ would be happy to read them out loud so that we can tend to them. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Rania. It was very informative, and thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box.
Also, as the questions come in, maybe we could take a screenshot to have a group moment picture. So if you're comfortable having your camera on, that would be great. If you're not, it's all right. All right, give me your best smiles. 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. A lot of thank yous rolling in the chat.
You're all welcome. You're welcome, and peace, Rochelle. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I guess this is not the first session you're attending with JCI Beirut, so I see you're becoming a fan of JCI Lebanon as well.
Yes, indeed, indeed. It's not my first session, and you know, I love Lebanon. I love JCI Lebanon since January. I was there. It was great. So it's one of my second homes.
Thank you. We hope to have you back after the pandemic is over, hopefully.
Yes, I hope so too, so that I can visit.
That's great. So if we don't have any questions, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, whether from Lebanon, whether outside, and whether you are JCI members or not. And I hope you take this information with you and you think about it and see what can you do at your own level as a responsible human being. There is a lot that we can do, and I do hope that this would be also a lesson, this pandemic, for especially the countries of the first world, that it is not enough for them to spend their time in their power struggles and in their wars and coming up with new weaponry and finding places to test them. It is also important to have an emergency preparedness plan, and I always wonder why they didn't have one, knowing that we have had a vibrant history of pandemics accompanying humanity since a long time ago. And maybe those of you who might also be politically active, it might also be an opportunity to lobby with your political leaders and governmental officials for them to have an emergency preparedness plan. If not for the potential wave 2 of COVID-19, maybe for any future pandemics, because definitely with all the globalization that we have witnessed, definitely this leads the way to additional pandemics. I also see a comment by Advisor GB. Thank you also for joining us, another big fan of JCI Lebanon.
Let's hope we get to do another international reunion with Middle Africa countries.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We have a comment coming in saying that this will help me in my work. I work in the government and manage the department for CSR.
Very interesting. That's good to hear. All right, we're good. Back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, everyone. You can see on my background, these are our social media accounts. You can check our upcoming events there. Thank you again, Rania. And thank you for everyone who joined. Goodbye. Please, JCI Beirut board members, if you can stay.
Yes. Also, we sent out a feedback form. Feel free to answer it. Thank you very much.